Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 262 and we have a good one for you today. Today's fish is a really cool fish and one that a few people have tried in their aquariums, some with success, some with not success, but I bet you will enjoy this fish. Today's fish that we're going to be talking about is Bam. Oops. Hold on. It is Bam. The Warty dogfish. Now, the Warty dogfish, or scientific name Atenarius maculatus, again, that's Atenarius maculatus, it is part of the family Atenaridae, which is the family of frogfish. Now, frogfish are a very diverse group of fishes, and sometimes they can be really difficult to tell apart. The warty dogfish does seem to have plenty of differing color patterns. You'll find them in yellow and orange, but this sort of red and white coloration seems to be the most common coloration there is out there. And I will be the first to tell you, I am not a frogfish expert, so if I get anything wrong, please, I do apologize. Bear with me. But the warty frogfish is a really cool fish. It is native to the Indo-Pacific region, going from Indonesia to the Philippines to Papua New Guinea, northern Australia. It's very common throughout the Indo-Pacific region. And so this is not one of those fish, even though it's not exactly the swiftest moving fish, it is fairly common. In terms of its habitat, it is going to be primarily found around shallow coral reefs, a lot of rocky rubble zones, sponge-covered areas. That's because this fish really depends on camouflage. So, and it is very, very good at camouflage. Do not let the coloration confuse you. This thing is actually kind of difficult to spot. But you'll find these anywhere from 1 to 15 meters in depth, which is 3 to 45 feet roughly in depth. So, you know, this is that shallow coral reef fish. I imagine things like the Great Barrier Reef, this fish would be heavily populated around there. Now, as you can probably tell from the pictures, it is a small fish. They grow to about 15 centimeters, which is about 6 inches, which is actually fairly large for a frogfish, but that's still a fairly small fish. And I imagine a lot of that is actually this tail. They have that pretty narrow caudal their mainly tail. But they have this round, lumpy body. They have a lot of wart like protuberances. That's why they are so good at hiding in sponges and corals. As I said, they are highly variable in color. Orange, yellow, red and white seems to be the most common, but you can find them in brown. And what's even more crazy is that they can actually change their color to match their kind of environment, which again is not that uncommon in the fish world, but this fish kind of takes it to an extreme. Now it does have this rounded caudal fin, and it has these very flesh-like pelvic fins. That's really how it moves around. This is not necessarily a swimming fish. It really just kind of walks and waddles around. But what's actually most interesting probably is that the frogfish are actually part of the anglerfish, that group. And so the first dorsal spine is actually modified to be an lure, which would be an Elysium, I believe, and an Esca. And they use it to, and will wiggle it around to essentially be a worm or a shrimp, as most anglerfish do. They're using that to bring stuff to them to eat instead of them being instead of a searching predator. They're a very sedentary ambush predator. So they're using that first dorsal spine to essentially lure things close, and then they attack very, very quickly. As I said, they rarely swim. They're more just walking around on the reef. They will use jet propulsion, which is kind of weird. Essentially, they'll just spit out water really fast, and that's actually how they move at their fastest. But most of the time, they're just sitting still, waiting on small fish and shrimp and crustaceans to come by. And then the crazy thing about them is they can attack so fast. It was almost the interesting fact I did the video on, is that they have a suction feeding event. And so something you may not have realized is their mouth is actually extremely large, and they use that large mouth to essentially suck in their prey. And it's so fast that it can take as little as 1/6000th of a second, which is actually so fast that I guarantee you, as a human, you really can't comprehend how fast that actually is. So, it's that speed is just actually really, really difficult to imagine. But that's how fast it is. Which is a good thing, and it's a good thing they're successful at it, because otherwise they probably wouldn't be too successful. So they're just basically sitting around waiting on stuff to come by. They're using their lure to attract things, and then gulp at a much faster. Basically, by the time I say they've already eaten. So really, really interesting fish. In terms of reproduction, they do have external fertilization like many others. It's actually fairly interesting though. They will actually release a kind of like a buoyant ribbon-like cloud of eggs, or more like a raft. So they release these eggs, and it can contain thousands upon thousands of eggs, and it's almost like a raft, and the male will fertilize them, and then from my understanding, they actually kind of stay in this raft. It's not like a bubble nest, but they kind of stay with this buoyant egg mass for quite a while. And I've even read some places that the male will actually guard the eggs until they hatch. I'm not sure on that one, but I'm not really at a point to dispute this. But it's still a very interesting, and it's obviously fairly successful. I do believe there is some territoriality around these things. Usually when fish like this are that solitary and that sedentary, they usually have pretty well-defined home ranges and territories that the males probably defend fairly frequently. And it's probably one of those things where the male has a slightly larger home range, and it probably encompasses 1 to 2 to 3 females in their home range, and they probably defend those females somewhat. Don't quote me on that, but a lot of fish that have that sort of lifestyle, to me, seem to follow that sort of line of reasoning in terms of home ranges and reproductions. Don't really have anything to back that up, but now for the interesting fact we're going to end the video on. Despite how slow they move and how sedentary they are, and even when they do move, they're awkward. Remember, they can eat food really, really fast. But what you may not realize, with this large of a mouth, they can actually swallow prey as large as themselves. They essentially stretch their stomach, that basically they can eat something and compress it, something that's as large as them, which, yes, is a small fish, a shrimp and things like that, but that's still a really, really good evolutionary strategy. Essentially, it's saying, I don't know when my next meal's going to come, so I'm going to make sure that whatever thing does come by, there's a good chance I'm going to be able to eat it and essentially digest it on it so well. You know, versus a lot of other ambush predators, they're constantly eating smaller things than themselves. This one being already small size, but still their body allowing them to swallow prey as large as themselves means that they have a much wider range of food availability while still remaining small enough to camouflage. For some reason, that's what stuck with me. And, you know, interesting. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. If you'd like to support the channel, please click the link down below. It is by no means expected, but very much appreciated. I am sorry we had a missed week. It happens. I have been so swamped with work that I physically couldn't do it. I promise you I would have if I could have. But thank you guys so much again. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones.